Thanks very much, Rod. That's perhaps the most attention that has been given this book. You have to use your imagination for this one. Look, spring is here. Earth has taken the sun for her lover. Soon it will see their offspring everywhere. Seeds come to life. Sleeping animals wake. We are no different, born of the same union. We share with all in the earth's bounty. But listen, these others come among us, once feeble, now so strong. They have something wrong with them. They want to break up the earth. They want so much they waste away from desire. They have rules the poor must obey, but not the rich. They have gods the poor worship, but the rich do not. They tax the poor to stuff the rich. They build fences around what they want and call it their own. They throw up mountains to live in and fill up the valleys with garbage. They force fruit from the earth out of season, and when it sickens, force feed it to make it bear more. This nation of theirs, like a river in spring, floods its banks and washes all away before it. 7 years ago, they promised us this country forever. Now they say our time, and Buffalo's too, is gone. I ask you, shall we give up without a fight? Or shall we say to these people, kill me first, before you take my land? Now that's how the Lakota chief Sitting Bull spurred up his followers to resist the American invasion. And as we know, he didn't get his way. They took his land first and killed him afterward. In the meantime, much of the time between those two events was when Sitting Bull and some thousands of his followers retreated to Canada and sought asylum. Well, you know, Sitting Bull's very famous, and justly so. I thought tonight I would turn the focus instead to the other character in my subtitle, the Major James Walsh, who's not as well known, not as great perhaps, but he's sort of a local hero for us, or he was controversial in his time. Walsh grew up in Prescott, Ontario, there on the St. Lawrence River looking across the border, and so he ended up defending the border out in Saskatchewan. He wasn't a major in the Northwest Mounted Police. He was a major in the militia, where he trained at Fort Wellington to repel any possible invaders. In the 1870s, when it seemed that if something was not done in Saskatchewan, the Americans who were moving west at a great rate would move in and take over this huge area that Canada had just bought from Britain. And so John A. Macdonald formed the Northwest Mounted Police. Walsh was one of the very first officers. The youngest of the recruits at the first time was a fellow named Fred Bagley, who many years later wrote his memoir. And this is more or less how he remembered those first days of the Mounties. Fred Bagley remembers, "The newspapers called for young men to defend the realm, and next day I became an underage runaway. Commissioner French, my father's friend, agreed to let me go as bugle boy for 1 year only. Next fall was my 33rd with the force. For the buckskin mare I rode, I thanked Major Walsh, who, seeing me, finagler from a drunken sergeant, gave a nod and a wink and said, 'We're here to stop horse theft, not practice it, son. You take care of that one, he's a beauty, she's a beauty.' Roche Percé, mud house, signature rock. With the Boundary Commission's heap of stones, these marked what the tribes called the Big Road, the medicine line. their sanctuary from injustice and justice alike. "We're British Indians," said the Sioux, arriving from the south, and had medals to prove it, given their grandfathers by old King George. They called on us to keep an old promise that we, for all our books, had forgot. At Roche-Percé, we found coal hard enough for our blacksmith's forges. At Mud House, we met the U.S. cavalry haunting the line like knights in a fairy tale, sworn to revenge. At Signature Rock, we carved our names in stone beside the Indians' painted ghouls and ghosts. At Wood Mountain, we moved into sheds vacated by the Boundary Commission and strung up hammocks for a token detachment, enough, as Colonel MacLeod told the brass, to make clear Her Majesty's intent. But not so many the frontiers threatened if they're all wiped out. 13 men at Wood Mountain, the Colonel decreed. Major Walsh to command. A mission of utmost importance and far from where decisions were made. And the bugle boy, who took abuse gladly and learned to ride that buckskin horse, Sub-Constable Fred Bagley? Oh yes, the Colonel had plans for me too. When he learned I played the fiddle, I found myself transferred to Battleford to play in the Mounted Police Band. They haven't been able to get rid of me since. And since he was a musician, I presume that he's the author of what his memoir calls an ancient mountain ditty. Then pass the tea, and let us drink, we guardians of the land. You bet your life it's not our fault the whiskey's contraband. They were actually known as the mounted inebriates. But of course, life out there was not that easy, and the Major suffered from erysipelas, known as St. Anthony's fire. Comes from, living and sleeping in dirty places. So the Major's curse, St. Anthony's fire. The itch gets under the skin and turns it red. A fire that burns within. It gives me no rest, no sleep. A humorless grimace that never softens. A temper forever about to explode. And one more nickname, a private one, others must not suspect. The sufferer. Saddle sores are relieved with salve, mere cuts and bruises with alcohol. But this itch digs deeper, it mines the soul, turns the inspector, the Major, white forehead, long lance, the white Sioux, into this before all, the sufferer. The itch gets under the skin, it burns, discolors, disfigures every waking moment, every effort at sleep. The more care it receives, the more it burns. It gets beneath the skin and burns. Now, many of the poems have to do with naming, and Walsh went by a number of nicknames. The Sioux called him White Forehead because of the distinctive sunburn he got. And also known as Long Lance because of the lances that they actually used. Other tribes called him the White Sioux. The men under his command called him Sitting Bull's boss, which is maybe a bit of an extreme, but because of that illness, when he did get leave, he was advised to, take some time off. And actually, when Sitting Bull and his master Lakota defeated Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn, he was away on leave. It happened to be the end of June 1876, and the news didn't get out until about, around about July 4th, which happened to be the United States centennial. So here's the Major on leave in the United States, Hot Springs, Arkansas, 1876. I call this poem Mission Creep. because suddenly things got more complicated for him. Hot Springs, Arkansas, 1876. 2 years in the Northwest brought sights I never dreamed. The Great Plains strewn with buffalo skulls, the spirit teepees shaking with fire. Then home, to cramped rooms filled with cramped minds, the cramped life that almost was mine. Talk of tariffs and scandals, silk hats and crinolines. I nearly turned round and boarded the next train west. Civilization, I murmured, but did not say all that was on my mind. You need a good long rest, said the doctor. Take the family to the seaside or the spa. You'll return to your duties refreshed. I wake early to take the baths, apply soothing cloths to my burning skin. On the veranda, I turn my face to the sun. A waiter brings me hot water and the St. Louis papers. Headlines 3 columns wide. General Custer dead. Indian massacre in the Northwest. Sitting Bull's red devils kill all. On the streets, every post and storefronts adorned with red, white, and blue. The centennial's here. But it's a bitter celebration today. Revenge is the word I hear instead. War on the Missouri is certain now. This changes everything. Nothing will be the same again. So when he returned to the Saskatchewan, Sitting Bull's, Walsh's main task was to meet the Lakota as they came across the border, where their only enemies were natives and not soldiers, and spell out to them the way things were going to be, like, don't steal horses, don't kill people, don't cross that border to fight the Americans. Of course, he couldn't speak their language very well, and he needed some guides just to find his way around in that immense prairie. And the guides that he had were those who knew the country best, the Métis. In Alberta, those Jerry Potts. In Saskatchewan, contrary to the fellow who said his great-great-grandfather was the greatest guide, Walsh generally relied on Louis Léveillé. And here I've given some words to Léveillé as he interprets Sitting Bull on their meeting. You understand, I cannot give you his own words. A shaman, he speaks in visions, untranslatable. When he tells who he is, he begins by telling of his people, how they wandered the spirit, how they wandered the prairie like coyotes, not yet Lakota, till white buffalo women brought them a sacred pipe like his, with a buffalo carved in the red stone bowl, which he fills with tobacco and then touches the earth and offers to the sky and 4 winds. You know, Sitting Bull walks with a limp. Not always. As a boy, he says, he was the fastest runner. His nickname, Slow, was for stubbornness. Same as now, he is called Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull will not speak of his fights with the troopers. He doesn't say he will sell his stories to the press, but he asks, and Major, I cannot deny, you write many letters, and the newspapers print. At age 10, he says, when he killed his first buffalo calf, he gave the meat to the horseless poor. All his life he has given away all he had. Many fine riders owe their horses to him. He has many times proved his courage. He has borne the 100 cuts of the Sundance, borne, too, the soldiers' insults, too many. If you make him go back, it will start again. And this time, you know, they will put an end to him. One of the reasons Major Walsh was controversial was that he did have a tendency to talk to the press about, you know, what the Canadian policy ought to be, which was something a little bit unusual, since Canadian policy was supposed to be made in London at the time and not in Saskatchewan. But Canada did